Nobody attending. Do we need to do the whole thing?
I don't think so. In my view, unless there's a change,
No, I have no new information.
yeah, then I think because we have the recording from like
Exactly.
was
Oh,
the
Mr. Penny,
19th.
yay, we have an attendee.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, hello. I always have to remember to unmute myself.
Yeah, we can hear you, Michael.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
My goodness, I hope some more people show up, or am I not seeing only tiles?
Are you able
You're
to see if there's anyone watching on Zoom, Janet? No, you're seeing all the tiles.
Oh,
Nobody else watching now.
Oh my gosh.
where's Bill Granger?
He said he was coming. He emailed me earlier.
Okay. Oh,
Okay. Well, I'm happy to get started. It's after 6:30. So, did you get a chance to already watch the video? There's a video posted on the budget page on the website, Michael. Did you have a chance to
no,
see
no, I
that already?
didn't. I just looked at some of the charts,
Okay.
financial stuff, the
Okay.
budget numbers.
Well, it appears that you're the only person here. So I'm gonna put it out to you. Do you want me to go through the whole presentation, or do you want?
Yeah, yes, please. I mean,
Okay.
if you don't mind,
No, of course not.
it's not quite the same as reading it myself.
Okay. All right then. I will do it. I will get started. So, please feel free to stop me anytime. Um, it is very informal. This is not a council meeting in any way. It's a question and answer period. So, yeah, if I'm gone through something too quickly, please, and I can't see your hand, so don't raise it, just if you shout out, please.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So I'll start the presentation. And can you just confirm that you can see it? Yeah? You've got it there, yeah?
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect, thanks. Okay. So if there is anybody watching on YouTube, this presentation is identical to the one that was given and has been posted on our website. So there is no new information being presented tonight. I will just start with some of the underlying assumptions that we have built into our financial plan this year. We are assuming that inflationary pressures are going to continue to stick around for some time. We have put in a provision for salaries and benefits at 4% for year one. The benchmark measure of inflation that we use to peg salaries against is the Vancouver CPI, the average annual change in the Vancouver CPI ending November 30th each year. And that indicator was 4.5%. This budget has been included with a provision of 4%. And that is similar, it's actually exactly the same as what we used last year. The operating expenses in this budget have been inflated in years 24, 25, and 26 by 4% and 3% for the final 2 years, 27 and 28. I do assume that interest rates are going to remain some probably between 4 and 5% throughout the 2024 planning period. That's good for us. We have some savings right now. It means potential for higher interest rates on those savings. I am including an estimate of about $200,000 for this year, and last year's estimate was about 120,000. On the opposite side, though, there is some interest rate risk for us from rates, because we do have two variable loans, specifically our fire truck loan, which has 3 years remaining on it, and also the interim borrowing, which as yet has not been accessed. We will, I'm going to look at that right now. I think that we do have to start to draw down on that loan for the design work that's going on in Blue Water at the moment. The financial plan assumes that there will be about $4 million remaining on the community center to fund the remainder of the construction. So I've used 2 million of unspent grant funding that we still have in the bank. And I'm assuming that that council will access the $2 million of growing communities. Oh, hi, Mr. Granger, I see you there. $2 million of growing communities funds that will be accessed to pay for the balance. Now, of course, the fundraising campaign continues to go on. We are very encouraged by the level of community support that we have received from donations from community members. And if the fundraisers are able to really have a successful campaign, then what that will do for us is it enables council to take $2 million of funding that we have at the moment. It's very unrestricted funding, and it can be used to prioritize so many of the infrastructure needs that council knows that we really need to get working on and start to address. So having that fundraising come in will really provide some flexibility and enable us to move forward with some of those very significant infrastructure repair and replacement projects. So that is the hope. Either way, the project is funded. It has the adequate funding it needs to be completed. So that is a really positive outcome at this point. We are expecting to be open in the spring of this year. So in a couple of months, we'll be there. The construction progress is moving along at a very fast rate at the moment. Non-market change is something that we talk about each year, and that is the change to the value, the overall value in the assessment roll. So it's not, as prices real estate go up and down for the same house year over year, but it is changes to the assessment roll. So it's the value of any new construction that wasn't on the roll last year that adds value to the roll. It's new assets that we levy property taxes on. So it's like new money to us each year. Other things that can happen throughout the course of the year is a property could change its classification, perhaps from, say, residential to farm status. So that would have the impact of reducing the value of the roll. This year we had some significant changes with the acquisition of the Metro Vancouver lots out at CRC. So we had all of those lots change ownership from a taxable owner, private owner, to a non-taxable, an exempt Metro Vancouver owner. So that was that results in several lots being taken off of our taxation roll. So that is a really prime example of non-market change. So this year, the new construction that took place over the course of 2022 and 2023 added about $38 million of value to the roll. So this will have negative downward pressure on the impact of tax rate increases. The change in ownership, though, from the CRC lots, the net effect of that is to remove about 54 million of taxable property from the tax roll. So that is expected to have upward pressure on the impact of tax rates. This year, we're assessing an average house, an average single family house on Bowen to have a value of about 1.585 million. And from the BC assessment notices came out, that's a drop of about 2% on average, island-wide. So market change does not impact the amount of property tax that's paid by a property owner, providing that their value changes in accordance, in line with the general municipal-wide trend. So if your property, your assessment changed by about 2%, went 2% down, then that won't have any impact on the amount of taxes that you pay. What does impact it is if that market change changes outside of that average. So if your property actually went up when the average goes down, that means that you will then be paying more taxes. And BC Assessment has done some really good work to make some helpful videos to really explain this concept well. And I've put the links in this presentation here. There's two, couple minute long videos, but they're really well done. And they really explain the concept in great detail. And I recommend anybody who really wants to learn more about the relationship between the assessment roll and property tax rates to go have a look at those videos. In 2024, so the net impact of all of the non-market change together, the increases on the roll, the decreases on the roll. Overall, it results in a slight reduction to our tax roll, which for the average taxpayer is going to add approximately $13 per average homeowner. Again, this change, it is all dependent on how the particular property value changes in relation to the overall market change. And what also isn't factored in here is the impact of any changes to the local service area taxes, the parcel taxes that have been assigned to the local service area if you happen to reside in one of those. So those are our water systems and our sewer system. Looking at our revenue budget for this year, we are proposing to increase the parcel tax for garbage for waste services from $617 per property to $628. And we are earmarking this money. We want to replace all of the garbage and recycling cans in the cove. We want to put in the big recycling stations there. And also we are, the equipment at Bird is being quite aged. We own the equipment there and we are responsible for maintaining it and replacing it. So we do need to save some additional money there for the equipment renewal at the Bird site. Our sales service revenue is expected to increase from about $450,000 to $546,000 this year. And that's our permit and our other fee revenues, our wharf, our mooring revenue, any of the fire inspections, that kind of stuff. Most of that increase we've estimated will be coming from recreation fee revenue and the potential for us to earn community center rental once that center opens. We have grants identified in the budget. I've kind of detailed the majority of them here. We've got $2 million of unspent community center grant funding. We have definitely been approved to have $754,000 in multi-use path funding. We've applied for some significant fire and emergency planning grants this year. They're not confirmed at this point, but the thing with the unconfirmed grant revenue is we put unconfirmed grant expenditures to offset that. So in the event the money doesn't come in, we won't go ahead with the project. We won't go ahead with the expenditure. So they really have a net zero impact on the tax rate. But in order to have the authorization to spend it, we need to have that expense in the budget. We need to have the offsetting revenue in the budget. So sometimes they're quite aspirational, the grant revenues, but they're not risky in any way because anything that's not confirmed always has unconfirmed expenses to offset it. So anything that is, everything else in here, apart from those fire and emergency grant planning, those are all confirmed monies and we know that those are all coming in. So yeah, that's good news on our grant revenue, which should be very close to what we've budgeted. Our development revenue, so those are our building permits and anything that comes from the planning department. We have noticed over the course of 2023 that our building permit applications have slowed down, our development permit applications, that kind of thing. So we want to be conservative here. We don't want to, project an increase when we see that those are the market conditions, of course, with interest rates, that kind of thing. So we have decreased our development revenue estimate for this year a little bit lower than what we had budgeted last year. I'm really amazed to see how close we were budget 2023 to actual 2023. We're $452 off. So Daniel is a good estimator of what he's got on his plate and what's coming in the door. So with his recommendation, we took it down a little bit more this year, but we do expect that to begin to bounce back. And we do expect that in the future years going out that we are going to begin to increase that little bits. Again, always being conservative, little bits by little bits in the 2025 to 2028. Lastly, our other income. So this is kind of a catch-all thing, and it includes the miscellaneous revenues and our investment income. I did mention already that we are projecting additional investment income this year. It's been increased by about $113,000. So that's the main driver for the increase in other income this year. Looking at it from a visual perspective, the property tax revenue target for 2024 has been established at $8,245,000, and that's increasing from the 2023 number of $7,530,000. It's an increase of $715,350, and it represents a 9.5% increase over the previous year. We are projecting 9.5 for 3 years, at which point we do believe that the tax rate will begin to stabilize and we can get back to annual tax increases that are more in line with cost of living. For the average homeowner at that 1.585 million, that works out to approximately $304 per year for the average homeowner. And what the drivers are for that property tax increase of the 9.5, about 1.5% of it is coming from it's driven by the capital program. This is going to be net new capital reserve fund contributions. About 3.4% of it is being driven by additional supplies and services. 2.2% of it is coming from staffing, and these are changes or new staffing that has been put in. And then 2.4% of it is, again, it's coming from staffing, but that is just staff increases relating to the existing complement of staff. On the operations side, you can see them by department here. It's an increase overall in the operating budget of about 12.5%, which equates to about 981,000. So of the 981,000, on the additional supplies and services, that makes up about 414,000. Staffing for the existing staff, that's the blue, that is about 296,000. So that will be COLA and grid progression for staff that are already here. And then any changes that we're recommending or any additional FTE, that would be costing perhaps about 271,000. Now, I just took the time to kind of detail this and talk about this a little bit. So of our supplies and services budget, 414,000, we are expecting an additional legal audit fees, that kind of thing, of about $50,000 this year. We do have a line item in for records management within the administration budget of $20,000. 232,000 is coming from these new grant funded expenditures that I spoke of earlier that have been in the budget. Again, they're coming from grants though, so it's not property tax revenue funded, but it is on the operating budget side. It is a significant portion of the growth in the operating budget. There is a $40,000 line item that has been added, an estimate for some IT needs, mostly relating to the fact that we are going to be going to the community center, and there's also been budgeted a new software program in the planning department. $50,000 increase has been estimated overall over all departments in all areas that we are going to need when we're operating our new buildings. Our fire hall, we've just had our very first year of occupancy at the fire hall. We did notice that we did expend more in hydro and maintenance costs than we had put in. So we did put in additional provision for that. I need to move something out of the way here. So for the staffing side, where I said that we were expecting about $271,000 of increases from either new staffing or changes to the existing staff complement. We have funding in there, a provision for settling our collective agreement with the outside workers. We are in contract negotiations right now, so there's a provision within that to settle our contract. We do have the impact of the full year of facility manager coming on board at the community center, as well as adding the custodial staffing. So last year, the budget had, of course, anticipated that the facility manager would be would be on board with us for a much greater portion of the year. We did only actually hire that position in December, but this year we're budgeting for the facility manager and the staffing for a full year there. So that's another driver of the labor cost coming from the changes and new. The fire department has requested some additional FTE to deal with significant increase in volume of calls. So we have put in a 0.4 FTE ask to fund additional hours to support the fire chief there. And as well, we do have additional hours assigned to recreation staff. This is program staffing, and it is another one that's actually funded through sources of revenue other than property taxes. This is coming from the increased recreation revenue estimate that we have added to the budget this year. With our existing staffing increase there, that's being driven by the 4% cost of living allowance that we have made provision for, as well as grid progression. So as employees gain seniority and move up through their salary grid, there's additional funding there to support that. As well, last year, council did undertake a review of the labor market and salaries against labor market. We adjusted, we put in the budget last year to implement those salary adjustments halfway through the year. So this year we do feel then the impact of the full year putting those salary adjustments in place for the full year. So that's another 109,000 to fund those labor market adjustments. Just move, sorry. Statutory reserve funds. So our capital expenditures, they are funded from, for the most part, they are funded from our statutory reserve funds. So they fund our purchases that are not operating costs. They fund our purchases that are infrastructure and renewal, and they're primarily funded out of reserve funds. So I wanted to, for those visual people, I wanted to provide a graph that shows throughout the planning period what it looks like, what our contributions versus our withdrawals, our utilization of those statutory reserve funds are. So you can see starting in 2023, the blue are the contributions. We had some very significant contributions in 2023 to statutory reserves. We have only about 1.5 million utilization of statutory reserves. And then in 2024, you can see the pattern is reversed. We have much lower contributions and much higher utilization. 2024 is a very capital intensive year for us. We have deferred so many projects for so long that we really need to start addressing them, and we really need to start getting at them. But I wanted to show you, this graph is a little bit unusual, is that in 2023, we did receive a grant from the provincial government for over $2.2 million. It was one-time money, and it was called the Growing Communities Fund. This is money that we received, and we stuck it in a statutory reserve. We've done nothing with it. We haven't spent it. It's still sitting there. So if we back out the impact of that one-time windfall of funding, what our graph looks like is this. So you could see then over this is in fact a 6-year planning period, those contributions then that are coming, these are property tax funded contributions to reserve funds. You can see that they're actually growing year after year. And that's the pattern that we're really trying to encourage. We want to set a rate of contribution, and we want to grow that year after year after year. And now you see the green, which is the withdrawals, the utilization of that. You can see that the plan is for us to get through this period of significant getting these big capital projects out of the way, one of them being Carter Road Bridge, some very significant culvert replacements and repairs, getting rid of these projects, not getting rid of them, but getting them completed. And then what we're looking at is over time, we believe, in consultation with the public works engineer, we believe that an annual investment of around $2 million is where we need to be sustainable and to ensure that our infrastructure and our assets and everything that we look after is maintained in a decent state of repair. So this is this is what we're trying to get to. And with our 5-year plan, we have a very predictable and an increasing rate of contribution, and then a very predictable level of spending. So that is, and over time, that means that those balances in those statutory reserve funds will grow. So 2024, this year, we're including $180,000 of net new property tax funded contributions to reserves. And like I've explained, we want to, over time, make sure that those gradual increases are maintained and grown each year. Looking at it as what the kind of split between our statutory reserves versus our non-statutory reserves. You can see at the end of 2023, going into our new planning cycle, we have about $7 million in reserves. We will draw those down significantly as we complete our community center and as we get started on the culvert work within the water projects. And once we get through 2024, our goal and our plan and what we're trying to achieve is to see a gradual year-over-year increase in the ending balances of those reserves. And this is how we are planning to support, to renew, and address our infrastructure deficit. Our capital budget projects are pretty much laid out in this one slide. So the top projects are what we're planning to do as an annual renewal in our different infrastructure systems. So we want to invest an amount annually into culvert replacement. We want to invest an amount annually into roads maintenance and roads repaving, that kind of thing, trail maintenance. Then the projects are underneath tend to be more one-off projects. So fire truck replacements, well, they don't come along year after year. Pit toilet construction, working on the community center, of course. All of those projects are more one-off, and they're recorded on the bottom half of the spreadsheet. So overall, in 2024, our estimated capital expenditures are almost $9 million. We intend to complete those in 2025, just getting through this significant large hump of capital projects, going down to 6.8. Something in 2025, which is still in the budget, very uncertain because, of course, we don't have the funding for it and it would require debt, is the service yard upgrade. So that's in the budget here at $3.5 million to overhaul the service yard. We need new structures there. We need a permanent place for the public works staff to have a dry lunch and safe room, as well as adequate storage and shelter for undertaking vehicle repair, that kind of thing, and equipment, housing, and storage. So that is something that is not in this year's budget, it's in the future year's budget, but it is a very big project that still hasn't been approved. And if it were to be approved, it would require additional debt financing. So that's something that we need to just keep our eye on about where we're going to meet that need to address the very deficient, very old, outdated work yard. Again, visual people, estimated capital expenditures in 2024 through 2028, starting out with almost 9 million in 2024, dropping down to about 7 million in 2025, and then leveling off to just around $2 million in each of 2026 through 2028. Our debt service costs, you can see they're impacted in 2025 by additional debt service costs should the council decide to move forward with the Works-Yard project, and the full impact of that additional debt would be evident in 2026 and beyond. Now, this, of course, is only the general fund debt. All of the local area service debt, so those are any monies borrowed for water or sewer upgrade projects, that would be on top of this. It's not included in these numbers, but the debts of local service areas are funded in the water systems, in the sewer system. Any of those debts are funded by the local service area themselves. All debt, regardless whether it's general fund or local area service fund, all debt becomes part of the maximum debt service cap calculation. There is a provincially imposed maximum debt that any municipality is allowed to get itself into. And that's it's a factor of their own revenues. So up to 75% of a municipality's and own revenue could be used in order to service debt. So looking at what we have already with the community center, with the fire hall, the community lands, we are sitting at about 962,000 a year. And that represents about 35% of our debt cap. There are potential near term. There actually is new debt for Blue Water. Eagle Cliff is in the process at the moment of being authorized. Should council go forward with a compost project, that would also be included. And then in the event that the Works Yard project moves ahead, that would add an additional $665,000 of new debt servicing payments. That would push us up to about 56% of our debt threshold. And then if we're looking way down the road, we're looking really long term, one has to think about the potential for the completion of the overall Eagle Cliff water upgrade project with a cost of about $2 million there. The completion of the overall Blue Water Park utility water upgrade project, another $2 million there. And also the how to fund the eventual expansion of the wastewater treatment plant at about $6 million. So those are all much longer term. But again, they would have the impact or the potential to increase the average annual debt servicing cost by a further $560,000. And that would push us to about 68% of our annual debt threshold servicing capacity. So it's just a slide for just to show where we're at as far as how much of our ability to service we've used up and how much potentially there could be. What we need to make sure that many of these debts are 30-year debts. So we really need to make sure that future generations aren't fettered in their ability to take on debt that they may need. So some options for council to consider with regards to the Cross Island multi-use path. The next section of the multi-use path is scheduled to be constructed from the bottom of Artisan Lane up to Charlie's Lane, and that's planned and currently underway being designed. The budget for this year to spend on initially is about $886,000. Of that, we have 752,000 would be grant funded, and 134,000 would be coming from our own funds. In 2025, it looks like a similar amount, 834,000. And potentially we could fund up to 707 of that with grant funding and 127,000 of our own money. So together, the draft budget includes these 2 years of multi-use path construction. Total cost of that is about 1.7 million of design and construction. And that means that we would be looking for a municipal contribution of 261,000. And we have funded that in the plan and over the course of those 2 years. And we have primarily funded the municipal contribution through the use of a source of funds called the Climate Action Funds. Now, this is about $204,000 that we received from the provincial government. The requirement is that it be spent on eligible projects that target greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So there are several other worthy projects that have been suggested for the use of these funds. For example, we could potentially use $204,000 to improve energy efficiency of our municipal buildings. There's been suggestions that solar panels on the fire hall could be installed, or install a heat pump to replace the existing propane heater at the new fire hall. Additionally, water catchment could be installed at the fire hall that would reduce our reliance on treated water and as other municipal buildings as well. And it has been planned that we would like to install a bike shed or electric charging stations at the community center. So those are some potential other worthy uses of those funds. As well, the On Island Compost project has a significant municipal contribution to it. So if council were to use $204,000 of that climate action funding, that would reduce the need to borrow build that project. So council has not yet made a decision on how to move forward with the on-island compost project. If council does indeed agree to move forward with it, then I'll be adding it to the draft 2024, 2025, 2028 financial plan. So I'll just take a few minutes to kind of talk about that and talk about what additional impacts to the budget that will have if council approves and directs staff to move forward with that. So the composting project on its own, the total budget is just over 1.6 million. We do have an approved grant fund of just over 1 million for it. We do have committed donation of $100,000 in support of on-island composting, which would leave us with a municipal contribution of just over $500,000. As I said, it's not in this budget, and we don't have $500,000 of eligible reserves to use to fund this project. So we would be looking to borrow the 520. Now, the cost to borrow $520,000. It would be under an equipment financing loan, which is a variable rate loan. It's short term and it has to be repaid within 5 years. So we could access that funding program through the Municipal Finance Authority, and it's a borrowing process that doesn't require the assent of the electors. So it is about $120,000 per year to pay principal and interest on $520,000. The upside of the project, of course, it is actually expected to reduce operating costs. So there would be reduced contractor costs to transport the organics to town each week. And there would also be a reduction in our tipping fees at the Metro Vancouver transfer station for less volume going there. So overall, the net annual cost to borrow $520,000 is $120,000, and we believe that the operating cost to run the compost facility would be about $78,000 per year. So overall, it comes with operating expenses of approximately $200,000 a year. But we believe that the operating cost savings on this project in tipping fees are about $65,000 per year, and in contract labor are about $75,000 per year. So overall, the savings, operating cost savings from this project are expected to be about $140,000. So that means that were council to move forward with this project, it would come with additional annual operating costs for the next 5 years while the debt was still being repaid of about $58,000. So there also is an objective to sell the end product on island. So we've included a revenue, a projected revenue of about $15,000. So that would further reduce the net operating costs of the proposed compost project to about $43,000 per year. And in order to accommodate additional expenditures of about $43,000 per year, council would need to increase the tax rate by an additional 0.6%. Now, of course, once the debt is repaid after 5 years, then the operating cost savings are expected to increase significantly, and perhaps by about as much as $70,000 per year of operating cost savings. So it's a short-term investment for a longer-term reduction in overall operating costs is what the business plan is showing. So if council were then to instead direct the use of those climate action funds, $204,000 to be spent on this project, then that means that the debt would be repaid 2 years sooner, and the significant cost savings that we would achieve those savings after only approximately 36 months of operations. But then this means that the multi-use path funding will need to come from somewhere else. And again, it's just, we don't have reserves that are structured really to support new. Most of our reserves are set up and established to renew and replace existing infrastructure. So that is a new source of funding that would need to be identified in order to undertake both those projects. So you can see the level of choice that is embedded in this budget that is going to need to be made between projects, or all, or borrowing, or there's many different ways that council could go on this. There's other decisions, of course, that need to be made. Council will soon receive the budget submission from the library board, so there is potential for additional tax rate impacts there. The contract, as I mentioned earlier, the contract negotiations with our union partners has just begun this week. So there is potential for additional tax rate impacts coming out of those negotiations. As well, we are doing an employee benefit review, so also again, potential there to have implications for property tax rates. So we still have a little bit ways to go down the road. But we are pleased that we've got a significant amount of the budget work done at this point in the year already. The budgets, we haven't heard from our other taxing authorities yet. They're finalized their budgets. So school taxes have not been set by the provincial government. TransLink has not published their budget yet. Metro Vancouver, and Islands Trust as well. We haven't received the requisitions from those other taxing authorities there. Of course, those other taxing authorities, they don't directly impact the tax rates that the municipality charges, but certainly when we are establishing our budget and we are setting tax rates, we do really need to be conscious of the overall taxes that our property owners pay, because there's only one pocket at the end of the day. So council does want feedback from property owners, from residents of Bowen Island. Definitely all comments are considered. So please submit any written submissions to the email address budget@bimbc.ca. And residents are always welcome to attend any public council meeting and speak direct to mayor and council during public comments. And the council meeting schedule and the link to the budget page have been put into this presentation, which is available on our website. And what's left to do now is to complete the water and sewer budgets. There is currently potential borrowing for 2 local service areas that will be undertaken this year. One is Eagle Cliff. It's underway right now, and soon to begin will be potential for borrowing for a sewer outfall project that needs to be done in Snug Cove Sewer local service area. Both have significant projects this year, and both will be required to fund using debt. So we still have to complete the public engagement process, collate any feedback, and present that to council. So in the budget adoption timeline where we're here nearing the end of January. We still have any feedback results of public consultation to council to present to them. We will complete the water and sewer budgets and present all of that information to council by the end of February. Then by March 20th, we believe that we will have an amended budget to the Finance Advisory Committee with a recommendation, and that should appear before council at the first meeting in April. And we will then be well in advance of our statutory adoption deadline of May 15th. We believe that we will have the budget completed and adopted by council by April 22nd of this year. So that is it for my presentation. And if there were any questions from any of the attendees or anybody, I would be happy to address those. Yay, question.
I'm just trying to unmute myself. I'm just curious, Kristen, one of the advantages of the community center is that the municipality will not have to pay rent anymore for the municipal hall. I'm wondering how that worked through in your numbers.
The full impact of that won't be felt until 2025. We, of course, are going to be paying rent at those spaces and this municipal hall here until probably likely May. So we don't get to start to see any of those savings until almost halfway through the year. But the other piece is there's still quite a bit of programming that will take place in the school gym. I mean, we won't have the workout, the weight center there anymore, and we won't be needing the spaces at the children's center. We will still continue to use the gym because there's nowhere where games with balls, big activity games can be played in the multipurpose rooms in the community center. So certainly our estimated costs of school use are probably gonna go down by about half, I would think. But full impact of that won't be seen until the 2025 budget year.
Okay.
Did you have anything, Bill?
Hi, Kristen. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Am I good? Nice to see you. I do have a couple of questions. Firstly, Kristen, thank you for the presentation and getting it out in a timely way. I think I started reading it. I don't know, when did you bring it out? A week and a half or so ago? Was it online?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So it's taken a bit of time to sort of find time to chip away at it, but
Yeah.
nice presentation. Thank
Thanks.
you very much. And honestly, thank you for having it here ahead of time.
Mhm.
I guess I'd begin by saying that I wish more people would participate in this process. It's I seem to show up every year. Thankfully, we don't have to trek up to Municipal Hall anymore. It's really the only good outcome that I can think of COVID is that we all learned how to communicate with each other electronically a lot better than we ever did before. My overall impression from speaking to lots of people on Bowen Island on the ferry back and forth is people are really frightened of the increases that are projected for at least the next 3 years. And there's also, I think, a bit of disbelief that really will go back down to 4% after 3 years, that there will be ongoing calls and demands on municipal services, on failing infrastructure, on new services that people bring along and think the municipality should be engaged in providing. And so there is, I think, a level of discomfort that we all know that there's broken infrastructure. We all know that there is a lack of basically savings available, reserves available. Everybody is aware of that. I think I can say this because I'm not a member of council. Most of you cannot because you're staff, but there's a reason that there are 5 new members on council. And it was a difficult decision, I'm sure, for the ones that didn't run the last time, not to run again. And a couple that did run, unfortunately, didn't get there. So it's there's a lot of unease about where we're going financially, and that's not just the municipality. It's a general feeling. I think inflation has scared everyone and treated everyone pretty roughly. So my questions are geared to trying to focus on a couple of areas where I think perhaps at this point in the budget process, maybe a little bit of second thought can modify in a little tiny way. It's certainly not going to change. If anything, I think the 9.5% probably will be more by the time the library comes in with their recommendations. If composting is agreed to by council, that you have already indicated, that's going to increase the requirement this year for property taxation contributions to the various reserves that are going to fund that project. So having said that, I wonder if we can look at a couple of things. Number one, the capital budget for 2025. One thing that I see that I remember asking about last year is the fire truck repayment. We, I think, have one fire truck purchase from 2 years ago or perhaps last year that's on a sliding scale still. It's a variable rate. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it was 640,000. It was taken out in 2022 and it
Right.
has a 5-year repayment history.
Okay, so it's got 3 more years to go. And what's the rate on it now?
It's floating, but right now it's
Yeah.
about 3.6.
Yeah. So what I suggested last time around is there somewhere else, and the only place I could find when I looked through all the statutory reserves is, unfortunately, probably the equipment reserve fund, which doesn't have very much money in it right now. That would be the logical one. I know it's a fire reserve fund expense, Is there somewhere else that that money could be taken from to pay that debt off so that we don't go into the new fire truck only literally 2 years from now, having just maybe not even paid off the debt for the last fire truck that we bought? I know fire engines are very expensive. They're not going to get cheaper either.
No. No, it's probably 470, 450 remaining on that loan right
Right,
now. I'm
right.
pulling numbers from my head that aren't
Yeah.
exactly right, but it's about that.
Yes.
I don't see any, I mean, there's nothing contractual.
The only
that
one,
would
the only
repay
one
it.
I can find is accumulated reserve. You know,
Yeah.
that was the only one that I could kind of land on and say,
Yeah,
pay off that debt. So it's not a floating rate. It's not going to kill us for the next 3 years.
yeah, you're right. I don't know if you caught the last council meeting. I did put revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw in
I
place.
did.
Or
I did.
yeah, so I wouldn't want council to spread themselves any thinner when it comes to accumulated surplus and access
Right.
that funding to pay
Right.
down that loan any sooner. I just think
Right.
it would leave council
I,
too
I,
vulnerable.
I understand. And that's kind
Yeah.
of, it's symbolic of everything that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
Every reserve is thin.
Yes,
That's
yes.
a polite way to put it.
Yeah,
Okay, well, there's a suggestion. So if you can go then to, I think I've got that one. I can put it away. Yeah, that's the only one that I think that I really wanted to. So if we go then to
Bill,
contribution,
can I, just before we
Sorry.
move on, can I just
Yeah,
add?
of course.
Just wanted to, thank you. I just wanted to echo what our CFO Kristen was saying, and the thing about the accumulated surplus and is it gives us the ability to take action when unknowns arise, but it's harder for us to access statutory reserves and or specified reserves. And so I hear you loud and clear, and it makes, it's great financial advice to pay off your debts if you have the ability to, but it also then one of the things we're constantly keeping in the back of our minds is having enough capacity for those unexpected surprises, which we seem to be discovering too often.
Which frankly is why the general population has so much trouble believing that it will ever go back down to 4%, because there will always be unexpected surprises that come forward.
And that's exactly right. And that's what we're trying hard to get a better handle on so that we minimize those. And, some of the ones that we most recently came across, like the unknown condition of the storm drain and trunk road in the village core.
Of course.
Was something that going forward, we are trying hard to be more informed about and to be more aware of and to be able to plan more accordingly for, so that we don't get those surprises that result in a huge financial hit that we don't have the reserves built up for. But we're still a pretty young municipality. We don't have the 80 years of accumulated surplus and reserve fund building that a lot of municipalities have had under their belts. And so we've got some catch up to do there. So.
It's totally true. Well, yeah, I don't really know. I mean, Liam, we've been at this. We, the Bowen Island people, have been at this ever since the municipality began. And I recall saying at the very first budget meeting with the very first new council on Bowen Island, reserves are everything. We've got to build reserves as quickly as we can. And they've been nibbled away at, over and over and over again. And we're at the point where reserves are everything, but we don't have very many to deal with. So I don't want to turn this into a pontificating lecture. It's not intended to be. It's like, hopefully some useful advice as part of the budget process.
Thank you.
The one thing that I did look at was the land opportunity reserve. there's $124,000 going back in. So we're talking about the draft 5-year financial plan contributions to statutory reserves now, which were all on one
Yep.
page. And, you know, they all make sense. We're building reserves. That's good. It's all coming from tax dollars pretty much, but still it's building.
That, to,
The Land Opportunity Reserve, I recall that we the Cove Bay water system borrowed a
Yeah.
bunch of money from the land
Yeah.
reserve.
yeah, that's the annual repayment from Cove Bay. It's taking
Right.
place over 10 years. So
So
that's
that's the amount
that's
that's
the
going back
contribution
in, right?
in, correct.
Right. Okay. So I copied off the statutory reserves pages so that I could refer them, but I couldn't find the land use reserve. Maybe I didn't copy that page. It's possible. I
Yeah,
did it all in a rush. What's the amount now in the land reserve account? What's the total amount, including the 124,000 yearly repayments? by the
so I
Cove
think
Bay
we're
Water
in,
System?
I think we're in year 3 of that repayment from Cove Bay, so that would be 3 times 124. But
Right.
starting last year, what we did was, because that debt, if in going back to 2005 when the money was
Yep.
borrowed, that debt was always carried in short term for many, 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 many years. There was only ever interest paid on that debt. There was never any principal
Yeah,
repayment.
I absolutely remember that. Yes.
Yeah, it got to the point where the MFA, the Municipal Finance Authority, was
Right.
fed up with us and said, you cannot continue to carry this in short term anymore.
Yeah.
So we were required to roll it into long-term debt. Now,
Right.
when you sell land, if there's any debt attached to it, the community charter requires that you use those funds to repay debt. Well, we
Yes.
sold part of our land that debt was attributable to the health center. But because it's been rolled into long-term debt, there's no opportunity for us to repay it. So
Right.
what we are doing is using those annual contributions from Cove Bay to pay the
Right.
principal portion off on that long-term loan. So we've had 3 payments of $124,000 going in and 2 payments of $42,000 coming out, which is principal on the long-term community lands debt.
Okay, that's good. There actually was another sale that went into that fund, I think, and that was part of lot 2, which went
Right,
to
yeah. Yeah.
to the
Right,
apartment
so the
housing.
balance was 8, you're
Right.
right, that balance
Yeah,
was
it was almost
800,000.
$1 million, I think, 870 or something.
Correct, yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that explains that. So that money is all coming from Cove Bay repayment at this
Yes,
point.
all of those, yeah.
All right. All right. Thanks. The contributions to statutory reserves for projects,
Mhm.
again, makes a lot of sense. The fund that's basically called Capital Renewal and Replacement Reserve. But again, for years, we've talked about an asset management plan. And I'm not sure that we're any closer today than we were 5 years ago. I know there probably are bits and pieces that are coming together.
Mm.
Is there any kind of coordinated plan to arrive at an asset management plan
Yeah,
that will inform how much money is going to be needed down the road, or at least
yeah,
give a guideline?
yeah. I think what you're getting, I think we're due for a presentation to council from a combination of myself and Patrick about the progress that we've made this year on asset management. We did hire that one temporary staff person to sort
Right.
of take on some of the operational load that would free up the ability for the other
Yeah.
public works staff to move that project forward. So I hear what you're saying, and I think you're right. I think it's probably time for us to report back to council on progress made this year.
All of which is to say, are we closer to an asset management plan?
Yeah, if I can't remember which meeting it was specifically. One was at the finance committee level, and then the same report was taken to council, where it was I brought a financial kind of long-term funding requirement, which showed just looking at our assets on the books and what we have and the rate of depreciation, if we wanted to maintain them and replace them and bring them all
Yep.
to be the fully funded status, I think we were looking at $100 million was that infrastructure deficit. I'll find the meeting where I brought the financial report, and I'm happy to share that with you. I'll send it. So if you want to
Okay,
have a
thanks.
look at it and have any questions for me, I'm happy to share that with you.
It's not so much detailed questions, it's urging moving ahead.
Yeah.
Let's keep going so that there is a good roadmap.
Yeah.
So that will inform the financial,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
asks and
the
decisions.
numbers from the feedback from the finance committee, the numbers were scary. So it
And
was
they
a,
are.
yeah, it is. I think it's a real wake up call for.
I mean, no matter what business you're in, the assets are they all require nourishing. They don't run forever.
No, and when
And
you're
replacement.
considering that most of them were built with dollars that were spent 20 years ago and they're all recorded at those dollars, knowing what happened to construction indices and cost to
Yeah.
replace things. It's I
And
think
not to put too fine a point on it, a lot of them were built on top of corduroy roads and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Bill,
And
I
then-
do want to say that the work that Kristen did is excellent, and it gave a very it's like a great snapshot of the capital side of things.
Mhm.
And it's rough, and it needs to be refined, but it is the first time that we really had that sort of higher level look across the capital program. And Patrick and his team are busy working with a pretty well respected consultant that has a firm, or not a firmware, but like a software called Citywide. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they have a pretty robust suite of tools in there, and one of them is a strong asset management module. We're using the same firm to also build out some electronic permitting abilities too in the planning department to try to streamline some of our operational work. And so the hope is that with these citywide folks, that they're actually owned by a company called Public Sector Digest, and the hope is that as we build out these modules, that we have better internal efficiencies and integration across departments, and while at the same time being able to build out a better asset management plan. Because like you're absolutely right, you know, until more recently, we really haven't known what all our assets are, what the state of them are, and what the replacement values would be. And so we're getting closer and closer. And you know, we did start with culverts because we sort of thought, oh, let's pick one asset class and start with that, and then and we know we have 384 culverts in varying degrees of condition. We know, and we're starting to try to get a rough cost estimate for replacement. I mean, it depends on the size of the culvert,
of course,
but we're getting there, and it's an iterative process that hopefully we just get better and better at.
Yes. Well, and that's all good. Congratulations on those steps. Yeah. Those are good, and exactly what we've been talking about, I think, for many years. So
I'm looking forward to updating my report with the year-end figures. So that will be the newest iteration in the next couple of weeks when I finalize the year-end statements.
Right. Well, I'll go with this is a personal interest. Community center fundraising. $187,000 in actuals for 2023. And do you know what the fundraising results were?
So I think the budget figure was 1.6 million or something for fundraising.
Yeah.
And it was always aspirational.
It was optimistic, of course.
Yeah. But the fundraising campaign is not over, and I understand that they're still working very hard. And like I said, in the event that is not successful, we have the funding. It just means that it takes money away from other very important projects that we could be getting done.
Which I will go on record publicly and say I support the fact that money was set aside so that, you know, the rainy day of the community center completion, or it will be a happy day, but a rainy funny day, I strongly supported hanging on to that money for community center completion. I have contributed to the community center many times along the way. And I wish other people would do that. And anybody that's watching, you know, this tonight, I hope that they reach into their own pockets, because it is an immensely important community asset that will be enjoyed by people for decades to come. I just wondered though about that amount, 187. Did it actually translate back into 187,000 in fundraising during the year?
Oh, yeah, we
2023?
we raised that this year.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yep.
That is good. All right. I think you've answered the question about the library. I was looking for library. I see there's a library fund transfer in which every year is 420 or so, going up to 506 by 2028. Is that all of the libraries operating?
No,
Is
I
that
haven't.
the-
It's all operating.
Right.
But they
And it's kind of
they haven't
administered by
presented their budget to
by the
council yet.
library themselves, right? They take an amount of money, and the library board decides
Yes,
how it's
indeed.
spent. Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah, and
But
that's
the board has, I understand they've approved a budget, but it hasn't been presented to council yet. So this was,
right.
I just put a placeholder in there. I haven't,
Yeah.
the council has not seen the budget yet.
I was actually a library board member for a number of years when the library moved from its little tiny space at Kate's Corner back into the wonderful space that it's in today. And that was a fantastic move. And so I'm always happy when I look at the library numbers, because they always seem to come in more or less on budget. And I think they're very capable about running the operation between them and the Cove Commons. It works out very nicely.
Yeah.
So I think I'm kind of out of questions. I appreciate the opportunity to, sorry to poke at the same old bears again, but I think they need to be poked at least once a year. I'll just sum up by saying again, it's really interesting. I'm nearly 70 now, and I've been on Bowen for 35 years. And I've watched many people of my generation, you know, grow up, have kids have grown up, they're leaving, they're just going, and it's really unfortunate. There's a dramatic feeling that Bowen is really becoming incredibly unaffordable. Many of my friends' kids that have kids of their own now come back to play ball, and they come back to visit their parents, and they would love to come back and live on Bowen Island, but they just don't see any way to do it. So as we move along the continuum of Bowen getting older, as we all get older, I hope that we're able to, I kind of gulped when I looked at the idea of reopening the official community plan again to a process that will be certainly time consuming and potentially expensive. But I think it's something that we need to do. We need to keep continuing to think of ways to make the community more inclusive, more embracing for not just new people that arrive for the first time and find Bowen Island, but for people that have been here for a very long time wanting to stay and continue. I really mourn the people that I've known that have had to move away to other places, you know, to places on Vancouver Island or places in the interior or places even in the next province next door, because they just concluded that they couldn't afford to stay living on Bowen. The costs were, at least the ones they projected forward, were becoming completely out of control now that they're on limited retirement incomes. I'm also still working, so it's remarkable that, you know, I still have enough income that I can afford to pretty much carry on. But that's going to come to an end at some point as well. So kind of a plea for fiscal sanity, for fiscal conservatism, to use a terrible term, but that's really what I'm asking for in every aspect of the work that Bowen Island Municipality is doing. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity and for all your hard work, all of you.
Thank you.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Bill. That's,
Thank you, Bill.
I've made notes for, hopefully I've captured adequately everything you've said, but that's a nice way to top it off, a plea for fiscal conservatism.
I think I used the word sanity first.
Sanity.
Yeah, I don't want to paint myself into a small C corner
Okay,
or a
gotcha.
large C corner.
I'll scratch it out and use sanity.
Sanity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
I-
Bill. We really appreciate your attention and input.
Yeah, I was going to second that. I'd add my thanks to the ones that Bill issued to the staff and all the hard work, and some very serious thinking has obviously gone into this. And I think that it does acknowledge a lot of the concerns of the community. And there's a reason that I like to attend these meetings when Bill is also in attendance. I learned so much. Thank you, Bill, too.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your attendance.
Yeah.
So were there any final comments that anybody wanted to make before we sign off? No?
Thanks
Well, I
again.
want to thank you both for attending it. It's, I agree with you, Bill. It's sad that there aren't more people attending, but it is available for review on the website and on the YouTube channel. I'll ask Janet to push out links to the recordings, and hopefully we can drum up some more public feedback, public interest, and get some more feedback to council about what the communities, how they're feeling with where we're at with this budget. I appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone.